and narratively, which is the point. And you guys know my ghost tonight is going to be the ghost of base Patrick Henry. We had a little beginnings of a topic on the Blitz on Saturday that a lot of people enjoyed. That was a little preview to warm us up for tonight. And as you know, when the two of us get together, I already saw the memes in the chat. Whatever I think we're going to talk about will not be talked about, but we will be thinking about the thing we were going to talk about while we're talking about all the other stuff we talk about. And that I can guarantee you. So whatever we're thinking about and we're planning to talk about will inform what we do end up talking about. And I already saw people saying it's going to be a 5-hour stream, but joke's on you, because I've learned to keep the next week open when I have Ghost on the show. So we'll see where tonight goes. But, you know, maybe we'll do a back-to-back. People don't seem to be too upset with this pairing, especially on the narrative, where we can let it run a little bit. Tonight, the theme is the final boss. So if there is a theme tonight, it is in... We talk about the Sovereign Alliance, Ghost and I, probably more than most other people, even though there's a lot of Johnny-come-latelys to that narrative. We'll get into that a little bit. But who is the Sovereign Alliance fighting against? And instead of going into the full scope of the globalist deep state, tonight we're going to talk about a couple of proxies on the game board that are definitely taking center stage, and they are beginning to converge in ways that we predicted several years ago, because I would argue that they are essentially the same thing. These are proxy states, proxy leaders, and things are not going nearly as well for them as the central narrative would have you believe. But before we get into all that, I am going to thank sponsors for tonight's show, starting with our new friends at Alp. Tired of nicotine pouches drier than your ex's texts? Meet Alp, the moist flavor bomb pouches that actually deliver. While the other guys taste like grandma's dusty tea bag, Alp hits you with bold flavors and 20 pouches per tin. That's 5 extra hits of satisfaction, 3 milligrams for chill mode, up to 12 milligrams for I just saw the group chat energy. Alp, or maybe it's ALP, because your lip deserves better than a desert. Grab yours at badlandsmedia.tv/ALP, ALP. Use code Badlands for 10% off and finally have a better time. That's badlandsmedia.tv/ALP, promo code Badlands for 10% off. I'm always a fan of strange ads, and that was a strange one. So I hope you guys are on board with that. We are also brought to you by another strange one, and that is our friend, our very own Jordan Sather and his Conscious Strength brand. Creatine has been a staple in sports nutrition and athletic fitness for decades, and for good reason. It helps cells create ATP, their primary source of energy. But creatine isn't just for workouts. Recent research has found creatine supplementation is great for the mind too, helping with focus and mood by increasing in our energy in our brain cells. Conscious Strength Creatine Monohydrate is micronized for easy absorption, unflavored with no fillers, and made in the USA. Combined with electrolytes and cordyceps for a natural workout, or stack lion's mane and methylene blue for the ultimate brain boost. Find the Conscious Strength products at badlandsmedia.tv/strength. Make sure you use the promo code Badlands for 10% off your order. That's badlandsmedia.tv/strength, code Badlands. And I cannot speak to all of Jordan Sather's products, but I did use lion's mane when I was fighting. I had nerve injuries, and I felt way better on that. So I can directly give my little testimonial that lion's mane, there is something to it. Made me feel better mentally, made me feel better physically, made me feel a little quicker in there, and doesn't get you high, no matter what people think it does. So please support our sponsors. They support us. Otherwise, Ghost is in the building. What's up, man?
What's up? And it's ALP, by the way. It's not ALP. It is ALP. I can confirm that.
All right. I figured I'd mess it up both ways. And
yes. Well, it's good. It's good to go buy camera with that. Right. I'm also relieved to hear that you're putting Mrs. Bright to work. And
yes.
she's pulling her weight. It's
about time she started doing some shit.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, you know, these women these days. So Ghost and I were talking. Obviously,
it's an excellent image, by the way. I just want to point that out. That
it's pretty cool.
It is an upgrade. Yep.
She was thinking. She was like, you know, everyone's getting these facelifts on the graphics, and Jess has been doing a great job with that. And she just started screwing around with some stuff, and got a different font in there, and yeah, I'm feeling like I'm either ready to take Mordor or maybe I am Mordor now. Whichever way the info war goes, I'm willing for it to go. But Ghost and I were talking on the Blitz. You know, we always talk about the geopolitical stuff, and as much as some people maybe think it's a tired narrative, I actually think the fact that the Iran war is a tired narrative is part of the narrative war. So we're gonna maybe do some lead-off thoughts with that, but some lead-off thoughts to the lead-off thoughts. um, I was saying to Ghost, like I can't help it. Hey, we've all got our things. We spend a lot of time on our research. We all in this community care a lot about what's going on in the info war, because the info war is meant to translate what's going on in the shadow war, which is what's really going on, which is the stuff we try to figure out. And Ghost and I in particular are very fascinated with geopolitical events. And oh, you guys are saying you can't hear me? Is that true?
No, you're coming through loud and clear on my end, and
Okay.
I mean, I assume that I'm hearing the same thing that
Okay.
Chad's
Well,
hearing.
it's just a
So
bunch of ne'er do wells then. So anyway, yeah, we had some issues last week, but should be good now. I was just saying to Ghost, before the show, I say this is a little bit of sour grapes. Hey, we're all human. We all have egos, even if we try to fight against them. And it does annoy me at times, I will admit, when we have weeks like this past one, where we got a lot of Sovereign Alliance dinner bell ringing, I think. Sometimes we go a couple months without really direct sort of indicators there. This past week was a big one in terms of Sovereign Alliance comms, and as you guys know, who have been watching me and or Ghost for any length of time, the Sovereign Alliance is comprised predominantly of the Trinity, but it goes far beyond them, and there may even be many more members in the ranks than previously thought. Maybe that would be a good table setter if you come back next week, is to get into some of the Sovereign Alliance territories that we don't always focus on in the core, and what their roles might be in the multipolar world, because there's some moves being made on the periphery. But the reason I said I was a little spicy is, I'm seeing the usual Truth Brigade and the same people 6 months ago that were saying Donald Trump is owning China and really taking it to the CCP with his trade war and all this kind of stuff. And then after Kash Patel announces that they're running joint intelligence and international crime operations with Russia and China, you get all these same truthers who come out and say, I've been telling you these guys have been working together the whole time. And this is why we often talk about the schizophrenia in the truth community, where people will read the Q drops about an alliance between Trump and Putin and Xi, and they'll keep that in their mind, but then a lot of their public rhetoric completely clashes with all of that, because they're reacting to Donald Trump's narrative deployments in real time, or these world leaders' narrative deployments in real time. The reason Ghost is my favorite guest to talk about the Sovereign Alliance with is not only because he researches it more than anybody, but because I think your public commentary is similar to mine in that you've never wavered off of those first principles baseline observations of the game board. You've obviously focused a little bit more on the Middle East, where I've focused a little bit more on US, Russia, and China. But the fact remains, people sometimes in the truth community, I think, get swayed really quickly when Putin says something they didn't expect, or Trump says something they didn't expect. These public relations that are going on. We have Trump supposedly fighting a war with Iran over the last 6 months. How could he possibly be allies with people he's fighting a war against? And this year in particular, you've taken a lot of shrapnel from certain corners, including in the truth community, because from day one of the so-called Iran war, you've been saying that you don't think either it's a real war or it's not what people think it is, and you think that a certain player on the board is going to be exposed more than any other, and have just stuck to that, even through all the public rhetoric and the back and forth. And it looks like we're starting to get a little bit more of the mask falling off, which is largely what we've been talking about. I've had you on the show many times now, and we have talked about the invisible enemy for years, and the idea that Donald Trump and the Sovereign Alliance are trying to put that enemy on the stage so that they can expose themselves. And it feels like that exposure that we've talked about and theorized for years really is happening more aggressively of late. And so what do you think about that in terms of how Trump has stretched this narrative out and the public communications? Do you see a shift in public communications from any of these geopolitical players that are starting to make people think differently about this?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly hope that people are. I mean, it's kind of like the Bitcoin thing with G Money. Like G Money says that, yeah, it's frustrating when you see like the corporations and the finks of the world talking about buying Bitcoin, but at the same time, it's like if this thing is going to take off,
Yeah.
that's like you need all that to happen. Um, we need everyone to get on board, like to change the way they're thinking about geopolitics, to change the way they're thinking about the world and the players, because the reality is just that America is the most psyoped population in the world, in my opinion. I think we're more psyoped, brainwashed, so to speak, if that's kind of a way of putting it, than like North Korea, than Iran, than any of those populations. And for the simple fact that
Europeans and Canadians give us a run, so let's not.
they do. But I will say that like if you go to Europe, it's jarring how
Yeah.
much less exposed they are to just like media in general. And when I say that, I mean
Right.
there are far fewer things trying to grab their attention at all times and sell them something. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's
That makes
like
sense.
it was jarring for me, like how like little like signage there was, how like few
Yeah.
screens there
We have
were.
a
It's like
communication dominated culture,
yes,
top down communication. That's true.
yes, yeah. So even at like the normie like surface level, it's like we are constantly being barraged by marketing campaigns and all that stuff. So for that reason, I mean, we are certainly the most conditioned, and um we're just hit with that stuff the hardest, I think. And so because of that, people's framing of like every single country in the world, like person, like leader in the world, comes through a specific lens. And when it comes to this support base of Donald Trump, which is largely leans to, I mean, it's conservative, right? Obviously, there are a lot of like defectors from all across the political spectrum that have come to Trump, including yourself, have come to like MAGA. But it's the problem I find is that the people who make up the main support base, who probably feel like they've been here the whole time, who probably been here since 2016, um, continue to like see the world through the lens that Fox News and the GOP have told them, like their entire life. And despite the fact that we can now acknowledge that basically every other aspect of our life, these people have lied to us about, it's like when a headline breaks, when Donald Trump says something specific, even though we know he's running information warfare at all times, they'll snap back to that.
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
Right.
of course. Like Iran is the big evil boogeyman. Israel are the good guys. I mean, even when people are willing to acknowledge that, like Netanyahu and his regime represent the aggressive antagonist in the region, they still will snap back to like a rubber band, like back to the core. Like, well, of course, like Israel is going to be on the good side. So, and that's frustrating. Like trying to work through that is very frustrating because I feel like we make a lot of progress, and then like a rubber band, we just snap back to like that old way of looking at it. So I do think like with this whole development that happened on Friday with the Mecca agreement, I think that is a big breakthrough of like, it's hard for people to snap back after that, and be like, okay, it's just the same old Middle East. It's just the same old, Muslims are, I mean, I'm sure I haven't checked the chat, but I'm sure there are people in the chat right now saying that Islam is incompatible with the West.
Not yet.
Okay,
That's only
yeah.
when Alpha's on the stream, and I've noticed that. So
I was on
it's
Alpha's show
basically
earlier.
only when Alpha's in the stream there will be those kind of chatters. But he's
yeah,
not here right now, so we're safe for this moment.
I was on Alpha Show earlier, and there are definitely people in the chat saying that. But that's very typical whenever I go on Alpha Show, because there are a lot of people who are of that mindset.
Alpha is of that mindset.
yeah. But anyway, so it's like what happened on Friday is significant. It's huge. We're going to talk about that.
We'll get into some of that. I think that's a good. Before we even get into the specifics of the Mecca agreement, it presents a good template for why maybe it doesn't matter that we're both saying it can be frustrating, people not kind of reading the tea leaves the same way or kind of getting the lessons that we've been talking about.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah.
but the
Well,
Mecca
and
agreement, I
just to be
think.
clear,
Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, being right is like the most overrated thing in the world,
Uh-huh.
and I couldn't care less about like being right. It's more about I just want people to start looking at things in a different way, so we can have a more interesting dialogue than just talking about
Yeah.
these things in the pair and like the sandbox that Fox News has built for us. We can only talk about it in this sandbox where people are going to be like, what did you have you heard about the Prophet Muhammad like raping a 3-year-old or whatever? It's like
Yeah.
whatever the you know the meme they've seen online where they're just like they're just regurgitating something that they've seen online one time.
Right. Ben
And
Shapiro. Actually, the Muslims were always bad, evil men.
yeah. And so we can never have like a substantive conversation because we always snap back to that, like, you know, those base, you know, ideas. So again, like it's less about like people listening and being like to me and being like, oh, you're like being prophetic or whatever. It's more about let's shift the Overton window so we can have a more interesting conversation than we were having 2 years ago.
Well, and exactly that is where I think I said this on the Blitz, and I've said this a couple times that we've had shows. It's not about being right about the sovereign alliance and the multipolar world and the multipolar war. It's about if we're wrong about it, that's a worse world. And of course, if you are wrong about something, even if it's bad news, you should acknowledge that. So I'm not saying, oh, just pretend you're right, even if you're wrong. Nothing of the sovereign alliance has been disproven. Nothing of what we've been talking about on a geopolitical level has been disproven. And I think longtime viewers and readers of ours on the Substack will acknowledge that we've been kind of riding this stuff for 4 to 5 years and pretty consistently in terms of how we have framed. We haven't predicted every single thing that's going to happen in what order they're going to happen geopolitically. You can't. Of course you can't. But we have largely, I would say, placed nation states and leaders into general buckets and circles in the overlapping Venn diagram of what we see as, I call it the multipolar war, but you can call it whatever you want, the sovereign alliance versus globalism, nationalism versus globalism. We've kind of placed these nation states into buckets, and where we have placed them years ago in these buckets is playing out in accordance, like they are playing out their roles in accordance with where we have placed them. And that cognitive dissonance is really what you're describing, where the snapback, the rubber banding you're talking about, that's what can frustrate me. When I talk about being frustrated, it's not like, oh man, people are talking about China being friends with Trump and I was talking about that. That's not what I mean. I more mean,
Of course.
like 2 weeks ago, and people watching this show know I've been like spurging out about China and AI for a while, but I'm like the only person online spurging out about them and saying China's AI program is going to help Donald Trump stave off the implementation of congressional closed source AI models, which you guys know I said on the last like 5 Wednesday nights. And this past week, the White House leaked their framework of an AI approval, basically an AI licensing program that applies to closed weight, closed source models, such as those from OpenAI and Anthropic, which I said. And when asked by Axios if this same system would apply to closed source models, open source models like those in China, Trump administration said no. In other words, the fact that China is accelerating open source AI models is giving the Trump administration shielding to do the exact same thing against some of these other players. So when you project that in advance and you operate from the framework that Trump and China are working together against a globalist system, and then you snap back when Trump announces a trade deal against China, against them, you are losing yourself to cognitive dissonance because people think, oh, how could they be working together if they're fighting a trade war against each other? And as I've been saying on this show for years, if they're fighting a trade war against the globalist system and the corporate oligarchy, it makes perfect sense for them to leverage sanctions and tariffs against each other, which I said they would 4 years ago. And this is the same thing, Ghost in the Middle East. People go, oh, well, you're saying that, Trump and the Israel are going to end up at odds with each other. But they're saying nice things about each other and they're running joint military operations. And you haven't wavered in that overall reading of the game board, which one of the things we talked about on the Blitz on Saturday was by projecting end states. You've projected a certain end state in the Middle East and how that is going to kind of come together and coalesce, and have rode that through. So then when Trump all of a sudden changes his mind in the public narrative regarding Iran or Israel, it's not shocking to people like us, but it is shocking to the people who are still walking around with that Fox or CNN sort of framing in their minds.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. Yeah.
And, you know, for this week, so I think one of the things I want to focus on, first of all, you and I on the Blitz talked about the faking gay Ayatollah. We spent some time talking about the faking gay Ayatollah. So I want to know how you read this development. I think this was Friday. Or no, it was Saturday. Iran's Mir releases video of Supreme Leader Mojtaba Khamenei for the first time. Except it's old, Ghost. And you and I spent that entire day, most of it, talking about the faking gay Ayatollah. So the fact that Iran then releases a video of saying it's present day, but it is decidedly not. What do you think about that one?
Like I saw the video. I didn't realize that they had determined that actually was old. Is that proven?
That is something I've seen. I could be wrong, but
okay, yeah. I mean, I've certainly seen the speculation. But if that's proven, you could be right. I haven't seen any like more developments on that. That was my baseline assumption. My baseline assumption was just that it was old. It doesn't prove anything. It's a video of him sitting in a circle with a bunch of dudes talking like that. Like that could have been taken 15 years ago. You know, it doesnn't even have a timestamp on it. Like they don't even attempt to like say when it was. And it is funny that like we literally haven't gotten any video of this guy. We haven't gotten any video statements. We haven't gotten any public statements. We were laughing about the fact that somebody said, well, you know, he's really injured, so maybe his voice will be different and he won't look the same. We have his own family members saying that they haven't seen him since he became the Ayatollah. They haven't talked to him since he became the Ayatollah. The president of Iran has said that he hasn't seen him or talked to him since he became the Ayatollah. The foreign minister has said that he hasn't seen him or talked to him since he became the Ayatollah. I think Ghalibaf, the parliament leader, said the same thing. Everyone is saying that like over and over. Like, well, yeah, I mean, I haven't seen him or spoken to him, but you know, he's around. And then the fact that nobody has brought this up. I keep bringing it up, but nobody else is bringing it up. Why isn't the Ayatollah signing any of these deals? Why is Ghalibaf, the leader of the parliament, why is he the one signing all the deals with Trump? It's like Trump is signing.
Man, his hands are all burnt.
Yeah. So it's like it's Ghalibaf is the one signing, and I think maybe Pezeshkian, the president. I think he signed maybe one or two. And by the way, we were laughing in the private chat because I was like making comparisons. I was just explaining who I think, you know, who are the mirrors of all these people. It's like Pezeshkian is the mirror of Trump. Not that he's as important, not that he's like as important as Trump, but just that he's he's a political outsider. He's a heart surgeon. He like just ran for president on a whim or whatever. A total underdog and against all odds became president. And then you have Arakchi, who's like the lifelong political like diplomat. So he's kind of like Rubio. And then you have Ghalibaf, who's like the Speaker of the House, Speaker of the Parliament. So he's kind of like Mike Johnson. No other personality like crossover. I'm just saying he's like the Speaker of the House, just to explain who he is. And then I laughed and said, wouldn't it be funny if Ghalibaf was like a Persian slang for Farsi slang for like penis, like Mike Johnson is? And then we looked it up, and his name actually means rug maker.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
In Farsi. He is the other translation is carpet weaver. So he's a weaver of
Persian rug maker or rug merchant, which is like that's G Money's spirit animal.
Yeah. So this guy is literally the maker of rugs, Ghalibaf. And that's just like too perfect.
He's doing a great job.
He's doing a great job. He's doing a fantastic job. So yeah, I mean, it's this. I brought it up again. I brought it up on the Blitz, but I brought it up again today on Alpha Show. It like everyone is walking around with cognitive dissonance and doesn't even realize it, especially the people who are of the mindset who still adopt the Fox News view of like Iran bad. We have to kill Iran at all costs. Like they are the most evil. And here's the cognitive dissonance. if you are believing everything you've been told, which is coming from the CIA, it's coming from President Trump. I mean, it's coming like everyone generally accepts now that the Ayatollah is gay, a homosexual man, a homosexual mullah, like a cleric, is now leading the
Islamic
state of Iran, the same place that we've been told that they throw gays off of buildings for like decades. So which one is it? Because there's no way that. Also, they're telling you in the same breath that this country is so unreasonable and crazy that we have to kill them all before they kill us all. And it's like, so wait a minute, which one is it? Are they so crazy and unreasonable that we have to kill them all, that like they're going to kill anybody for being gay? They're going to kill anybody, like, but they have a gay leader? So which one, like, or is the leader fake and this is all a lie and they really are what you said they are? But like nobody's addressing the fact that this guy's a homosexual and he's purportedly the head of this extremist country where if you're even gay, they'll cut your throat.
Well, things are changing over there, though, Ghost. Remember, keep in mind, we got Jolani.
But if they are, then why do we have to kill them all? Like, so I need the Fox News crew, like the Fox News people, to tell me if that's the case, if what you're saying is true, then why do we have to kill them all? Like, what? Like, why? Make the case for why we have to go kill them all, because we're being told if we don't kill them all, they're going to kill us all. Like it's a us or them. It's a zero-sum equation. Either we kill everyone in Iran or they kill everybody in the West. So like, which one is it going to be? Because that is the case that's being made on Fox News right now. That case is being made.
We were going to do that until Jolani was like, listen, we can do pride marches in the new Syria that I am presiding over, even though I am supposedly a terrorist from a previous Al-Qaeda regime. But the thing I thought was interesting about the faking gay Ayatollah video is that it came out the day we did the Blitz. I don't know if that came out before or after the Blitz. I saw it after the Blitz. But one of the things we were talking about on the Blitz was the article or the report Ghost is referencing is a report from the New York Times that is, I won't pull it up now, but basically from back in April, the New York Times ran an op-ed citing all their CIA intel sources saying, addressing the theories of why we hadn't seen the new Ayatollah make any appearances or give any statements or audio or anything like that. So in my estimation, Western media was running cover for one of their assets and were saying, well, he's been badly damaged in the airstrikes that Trump first launched as part of Epic Fury. And they said two things, as Ghost mentioned a few minutes ago. Number one, the new Ayatollah does not look the same as he looked. Number two, if you do hear from him, he won't sound the way he sounded either. Which to me at the time, and as I said on the Blitz yesterday, that was a big tell that the Western intel assets that have been working with their not Iranian only, but their Islamic proxies in the region, such as ISIS, such as Al-Qaeda, such as all of these, Islamic terror groups, they did not know, in my estimation, based on that reporting, what was actually going on in Iran. They were hedging their bets. In my opinion, that report was released specifically to give them cover to retroactively claim that a new actor they installed was the Ayatollah, so that they could keep that story running while they waited for the dust to settle regarding Epic Fury. Now, Trump has kept Epic Fury going for 6 months now and counting, and I think that's one of the major reasons you're seeing this retreat. So in that context, when the Iranian state media comes out this weekend and releases what they are claiming is a current video of the faking gay Ayatollah that the Western intel media 3 months before said was disfigured and couldn't speak anymore, you put that Western intelligentsia in a bit of a pickle. You either get that Western intelligentsia to acknowledge that Iranian state media is just completely lying about the Ayatollah, in which case, to your point, why would they be lying about him? And second, their other choice is to say that that is the Ayatollah and to double down on the Iranian state media lie of the current guy who's supposedly leading this nation. So I found that interesting, and I want your thoughts on that combined with this beautiful headline that set us up for tonight. In the context in which Iran, in my estimation, is playing games with Western media, I want you guys to look at this quote from Donald Trump, sourced by Axios. Trump to Axios, quote, "We are low-keying it with Iran." When asked about where the deal is at, "We are low-keying it." Trump said during a brief phone call, quote, "We are only semi-negotiating with them. We are just watching Iran with its huge inflation and the fact that they have no money." So, you can take that a few different ways, but I certainly took it in the way we've been looking at it.
Yeah, let me pull this up because we also have some corresponding language from Arakchi because he said and Trump could be like responding to what Arakchi said. I don't know, but this is a great example in my opinion. And people think I'm crazy when I say this stuff, and maybe I am. I think you're crazy for thinking that the Ayatollah is actually gay and like a homosexual was leading Iran, which is what Trump says every time the Ayatollah comes up. He's like, "Well, he's gay, right?" And everyone's like, "Oh yeah, of course, of course." It's like, what? Like, nobody's questioning that. Nobody's questioning the fact that he's gay. But let's pull up this quote from Arakchi. Arakchi is of course the foreign minister of Iran, and I guess I should probably share my screen.
Yeah.
All right. So here's what he says. He says, "We currently have no negotiations with America. Yes, messages are being exchanged through intermediaries. This is not called negotiation. It's an exchange of messages. Intermediaries are still trying to create the grounds for negotiations again. In our view, until the violations of the Memorandum of Understanding are over and America compensates for what it has violated in the MOU, the possibility of starting negotiations again does not exist." So
they're negotiating for the negotiations, Ghost.
Yeah. It's like they're engaged to be engaged. It's like we're not negotiating. We're just playing footsie under the table.
It's a promise ring. Yeah.
Yeah. It's very, very silly, despite the fact that like they've already signed multiple deals. It feels like they've already signed multiple deals. Right. I mean, maybe it's only been one deal, but it feels like in principle, or at least like there's been.
It wasn't a deal. It was a memorandum of understanding.
A memorandum of understanding.
Negotiating for a deal, man.
That is true. That is true. That is true. But see, you contrast that with what Trump said. This is what Trump said. Because remember, last week it was like, we are going to nuke Iran. Like that's like the people on Fox News were, I'm sure, I don't watch Fox News, so I'm sure that they were just doing this. I'm sure that they were like pleasuring themselves to the idea that we were about to go all out because Trump was like, we are going to hit them in a way that a country has never been hit before. Since World War II, we haven't hit a country like this. That's what like multiple people in the Trump administration said. And then Trump came out and said, actually, because Arakchi gave us a call and said that he was going to agree to open the Strait of Hormuz, I canceled the attack because Arakchi told me to. It's like, this doesn't make any sense unless like if you take this at face value, it must be very hard to be a normie or to be someone who watches Fox News and like subscribes to their framing of it. And I'm picking on Fox News because that's the storyline that Trump engages with. Like he acts like Fox News is the one telling you the truth. So that's why I'm picking on them and using them.
Yeah, same with the GOP. Like he rides that.
Yeah,
he rides that side of the zeitgeist.
They're like the central, like they're like the main universe, and like the multiverse, they're like the main center one, right? It's like Trump in Iraq. It must be very hard for people who subscribe to that story because they are just getting jerked around and they have no idea what's going on. It's like, we're attacking, we're not attacking, we hate them, we love them. Arakchi like is putting like they're posting Lego videos, like what's going on? If you view it in alternative framing, if you view it as Trump is fucking with people, like and specifically foreign leaders, I would say he's doing this for dual purposes. Last week you had General Quast on. General Quast said this messaging really is not intended for the American people. It's really intended more for the foreigners,
Yeah.
foreign entities. And I think perhaps, and I'm just speculating here, that what he was referring to was twofold. It's for the enemies, of course, to confuse them so they don't really know what's going on, but it's also to create the conditions internationally so that the thing that happened on Friday makes sense and like should happen. And it happens. People are like, oh yes, finally stability, right? Like the Mecca agreement, which we'll get to the Mecca agreement in a minute. But if you accept that's what, like when General Quast describes that's what he's saying, is it possible that Arakchi is also doing that from the Iranian side, knowing that he, just like President Trump, has bad actors in the American government who are trying to subvert him and topple him? Perhaps Arakchi also has bad actors in the Iranian government that are trying to subvert him and overthrow him. And by the way, we talked about that on the Blitz yesterday. They absolutely are people in the Iranian government who are trying to stop Pezeshkian, stop Arakchi, and stop all this from happening.
Yeah, and I think that's a great way to put it. And, this is, again, I keep using the term end states, projected end states with this kind of stuff. So one of the contradictions that you point out, one of the sources of cognitive dissonance, that I totally agree that right now it is tough if you're a MAGA normie or a conservative normie, like a Trump supporting normie. The central narrative, make sure you listen because I'm not shitting on Trump. The central narrative version of what is transpiring in 2026 is catastrophic for Donald Trump's stated narrative. If you are reading the central narrative, for 6 months, you have had President Trump saying, well, first of all, for 10 years, you had President Trump saying, no new wars in the Middle East, no Middle Eastern adventurism, no strikes on foreign nations, no forever wars, no proxy wars, none of that, right? And he was specifically referring to Iran with many of those things. We're not going to fight Iran. We're not going to war. We're not doing this. We're not doing that, right? So you already had to pivot immediately. And we saw most of MAGA do that on a dime in February, right when Trump supposedly started bombing Iran. Everyone went, brilliant masterstroke, Donald Trump. We always knew that we put you into office for one thing and one thing only, and that thing was to carpet bomb Iran and take over the Strait of Hormuz. Even though if you had asked every single one of those people on whatever it was, February 25th, do you want President Trump to bomb Iran? Almost all of them would have been like, no, man. What are you talking about? We put him in there specifically to not do that. Specifically to not do that very thing. But then they're like, a masterstroke, sir. Now, this puts us in an interesting position, which is why we are schizophrenic weirdos, but we keep being right about everything. We were cheering for what Trump was doing because we don't think it is real in the way that the central narrative is telling you, or at the very least, we have never believed from day one that the narrative we were being told about what is happening is an accurate representation of what is happening. We've long been using terms such as inversion. We've been using narrative translation layers. We've been saying we think there's a disentanglement going on here, that we're not earnestly at war with Iran. And I'll get to that point in a minute. But again, from a central narrative framing, you're now in August. This started in February. How many of us got caught up in the first couple weeks, the first month, the first 2 months, the first 3 months, by when all your normie friends were like, hey, you think this is going to end soon? Oh, yeah. Trump's got a deal worked out. He already said he's got a deal worked out. Trust the plan. You guys still saying that to the normies? If you kind of shut up. You probably kind of shut up, right? And I'm not even saying that as a negative thing, by the way. I'm not trying to talk to normies about this shit. Because there's no way you're even going to make any headway into that. Which is why, as you said, and as General Quast said on the show last week, one of the things I've been most fascinated by in this Iran war is not just that the narrative has been stretched timeline-wise like it has been, but Trump's demeanor as the timeline has been stretched. It's been overwhelmingly positive and overwhelmingly in control. His demeanor, his public demeanor is not worried, right? He's not worried about the midterms that all of Con Inc. is telling us to be worried about, and Fox News is telling us to be worried about. He doesn't seem to be worried about geopolitics. He's not worried about NATO. He's not worried about American energy markets. In fact, and I told you guys this back in March on DPH, I thought Trump was going to start putting public pressure on American energy companies more so than Iran about the oil prices. And of course, he's doing that, right? So there's more going on here. And I just think it's worth, though, understanding that what is going on here is more important about the world stage, to Ghost's point. And I think the proof is in the pudding there, because Trump is taking all of this real rhetorical damage on a short enough timeline. Right now, it's the rare instance of being a Trump supporter or a MAGA supporter where when CNN or the New York Times or whoever writes op-eds saying Donald Trump is doing all this shit in 2026 that he said for 10 years he wasn't going to do. If, to Ghost's point, if you are observing this all from the perspective of the central narrative, that is an unassailably true statement. It is unassailable that from a central narrative perspective, Donald Trump started a war that he said he wasn't going to start, refused to call it a war, which is exactly what he said Obama did, so that he wouldn't have to involve Congress, and is lying about how long that war is going to take and how long he is willing to perpetuate it. And he is saying he doesn't care about the economic impact of that war on his own base. So, like, from a central narrative perspective, it is the worst run of Trumpism we have ever had by a lot. All of which is to say, the only way to reconcile this as a positive, I think, is twofold, and I'll pass it to you. One, Donald Trump knows what he's doing and knows about this damage he is taking and is willing to do this anyway. Two, if that is the case, it must follow that this is in line with a sovereign alliance and multipolar framework. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense, in my estimation. And I think the pieces in the region, to your point about Mecca, are starting to form themselves in alignment with a lot of the broad visions we've laid out. That Donald Trump is not trying to destroy Iran. He is trying to provoke that region into a total realignment that seems to be in the offing.
Yeah, I think it's exactly right. And like, look, like, let's be honest about all this. I did not think that we were going to get a war with Iran. Like, that was a rug for me too. Like, of all the things that we prognosticated, that was one that blindsided me for sure. Mm-hmm. I thought that we were going to see Trump diffuse that, because it looked like that was happening. It was being diffused. However, I did post earlier, like, I went and found the post that I pre-recorded my show the morning of June 12th that aired on June 13th, the afternoon of June 13th, 2025. And that was the day the 12-day war started. So I was able to hear what I said. What I said was that the game theory suggested that Trump had Netanyahu in a corner, where Netanyahu, based on what he was facing domestically, politically, like, he was about to lose the support in the Knesset, and that would kick him out of office. He either needed to launch a false flag against Israel, which would like on October 7th, which would have galvanized, support. Although at that point, maybe that would have blown up in his face, or he needed to attack Iran and start a war, which is what he ended up doing. So that part of it, like him going out and attacking Iran on June 13th, 2025, that wasn't so much a surprise as the February 28th, 2026, when Trump went and did that himself, and then came out and said, yeah, I was the one who attacked first. I attacked before Israel could. And Rubio came out and said, well, yeah, we attacked. That's because we knew Israel was about to do it. We wanted to do it first, so we did it. Now, again, we can bicker about, like, is that true or whatever. That's what Rubio said. So we'll just take him at face value for now. That's what that's at least what's in the centrals, like in the central narrative. That's what happened. So yes, we were caught off guard there. However, now with the benefit of hindsight, understanding how retarded everybody is, and how easily like I am so disappointed in how easily everybody fell right back into
They got
the
right back into
like
2004
holy
neocon.
shit, dude.
Yeah, Holy
Holy
War.
shit.
The Holy
Like,
War's back on, Ghosts.
oh my gosh, dude. It's like so disappointing. I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed that so many people fell right back into the pit of like the post 9/11 psyops, like all of that. And I was like, man, I really thought that we had gotten past all that and that we were like looking forward. But then I also came to appreciate that I live in like an information ghetto. I live in like a fucking tiny little place where not very many other people live.
The Gaza Strip of the info war.
I live in the Gaza Strip of the info war, and I haven't traveled like many of the Gazans. I have not traveled the world and seen things, and so that was definitely an eye-opening experience. Because of all that, though, this is also so necessary because it's not just about convincing the American public or the European public or whatever that this is necessary. I mean, that's part of it, but I would actually argue that's a very small part of it. I think it's a much bigger part that you have factions in all of these countries. Actually, if I could share my screen, I put this map together. All right, so this is the mind map of the Middle East. So you have all of the world, you have all the leaders of every country here, right? And I kind of sized their photos based on their importance.
Those Muslims.
I mean, Putin should be much bigger, but Russia is only represented in a very, very small area up here. But yeah, like if you look at this map, it's actually very encouraging because I can scroll around this entire map and I can point to who all these leaders are. And they're all actually very, very good friends of Donald Trump now. All of them.
Yep.
The only like the ones that I don't think like ostensibly have a relationship with Trump would be this guy from Eritrea, who is probably one of the most based leaders in the world. He's been in office for like 30 years, but his attitude is literally, we don't want anything. We don't want USAID money. We don't want anything. We would rather be poor and live in straw huts. We're good.
Sovereign maximalist, basically.
Very, very based. The Sudan guy Sudan's been in the civil war since 2022, or I'm sorry, maybe it's 2023 because they agreed to host a Russian Navy base. And as soon as that happened, Biden's State Department was like, okay, well, we are definitely going to go start a civil war there. And they did. The Yemen leader, like Yemen is its own thing. Outside of those three, I mean, I can look at every other leader on this board and say Trump has a relationship with every single one. I mean, you can say Pezeshkian and him are not getting along right now, but I would also argue that they are getting along because they're signing memorandums of understanding. The guy who's the head of Afghanistan, you could say that him and Trump don't get along. Well, wait a minute. Trump signed the Doha agreement and gave him his country back. So, I mean, I would say they're actually in pretty good standing. Everybody else,
they're low keying it, Ghost. That's the new terminology.
I mean, I love that. I love that terminology. Like, we're low keying it. While it is the marquee story of every single newspaper every single day since February 28th.
Whoa, baby. We're keeping it low key, right? Like, meanwhile, he's publicly threatening. And again, that's why, like, my rant a couple minutes ago isn't meant, I hope I qualified that enough to say it's not meant to be shitting on Trump. It's to say these things can't both be true at the same time. Yeah. Either Trump is lying about the reasons for going into Iran in the first place, or he's lying now with his low-key communications and back-channel communications. I do not think he's lying now. I think they are low-keying it. I think they have had back channels going on the entire time. I think the lie is the public central narrative of why they went in there. And, this map is also illustrative. I think it was last week that we had the Iraqi leader in the Oval Office with Donald Trump, right?
So it was 3 weeks ago, maybe 3.5 weeks ago. And Al-Zaidi, and he is just like Pezeshkian. He is the Trump of Iraq. So he's a 41-year-old businessman, no political experience. He has an MBA. He's literally like a business guy, entrepreneur. Trump brings him in. Trump's like, this guy's awesome. He's my guy. Apparently, he was brought in because the two factions who were running their parliament, who won the elections in January or February, were arguing about two candidates they really wanted. And then Trump brought this guy in through his proxies and said, hey, here's the compromise candidate. Can y'all get on board with him? And everyone was like, yeah, actually, we like him. Like, that's cool. So everyone got behind this guy. And then he went and rounded up like 47 corrupt leaders, arrested all of them. He leaves the Oval Office and he travels to Iran. And he signed some pretty important deals with Iran. He signed like a railroad deal where they're going to build a railroad between Tehran and Baghdad. He signed some pipeline deals. He signed a deal where they're going to clean up all those Iranian-backed militias that are on the border of Iraq and Iran. Like this guy said in the Oval Office, it's a priority to disarm all of them. He said they have until like October 1st or whatever to turn in all their weapons and disarm. Otherwise, they're going to be considered enemies of the state. The Iranian government are now saying, yeah, we're going to help you do that. And now we're also learning from the Iraqi government that they might be backed by Ukraine. These militias are actually backed by Ukraine. He leaves Iran and then he goes to Turkey and he signs really, really important deals with Turkey where not only are they going to build new railroads between Turkey and Baghdad, but which means that the railroad's going to connect Turkey with Iran, with Tehran. They also major oil deals where the Turks have now bought 15% of BP's ownership stake in their Kirkuk company. Long story short, Turkey's investing billions of dollars along with BP and ConocoPhillips in developing and redeveloping rather the Iraqi oil fields that were destroyed in 2003 when we went into Iraq. The same day that he came and met with Trump in the Oval Office, we got from the White House said that the White House is backing a deal between Iraq and Syria where we're actually going to rebuild old pipelines from Iraq that are going to go to the Syrian coast, and they're going to pump all that oil to the Syrian coast. This is a stick in the eye. All that oil is coming from Kirkuk, which is roughly right here, and down here, the Persian Gulf. That is a huge stick in the eye to Netanyahu because all of Netanyahu's cabinet have been saying for months that they're going to pipe all that oil from Iraq and Saudi Arabia to Israel. And Israel is going to be the port on the Mediterranean that's going to provide oil to everybody. Nope, it's going to be Syria.
So let's get more into some of how these things are realigning, because I keep talking about projected end states. And again, it's not just like, oh, well, your sovereign alliance framing is right if you think it's right, but it could be that the Fox normies are right and Iran is the bad guys, all this kind of stuff. This kind of stuff that we're talking about, these deals that are coming together, we did project these, right? To your point, we, of course, can't predict everything. But when we've been looking at the map, literally, and we've been talking about this on, you've been talking about it on your geopolitics shows. I've been writing about it. One of the things that I wrote back in March, I think it was. When did I write this? Yeah, March, during my Iran war series. Donald Trump's energy war, from axis to ashes, the hegemon is dead. By the way, this is not about Trump's energy war with Iran. This is about Donald Trump using Iran as a proxy to remove the leverage point of the Strait of Hormuz from the Western energy markets, which now you guys probably saw all the truthers on Twitter in the last 24 hours saying that that's what's going to happen, because Scott Bessent finally word for word said that's what they're doing. He said we're trying to disentangle everybody from the Strait of Hormuz. Sergei Lavrov said this back in March after I'd said it in that series. And these deals that Ghost is referencing, Iraq and Syria, Syria and Turkey, Syria and Russia, you sent one over earlier. That's not an energy deal, but you've got Syria and Russia here signing for future regional bases, military cooperation between those two. Remember, way back in 2024, was it? We had talked about when Jolani came in to Syria. I had said at the time, this is your first really obvious example of sovereign alliance maneuver defense, in which the Russian forces withdrew from Syria and then U.S. CENTCOM targeted ISIS in the immediate aftermath of the Russians withdrawing. And what was that to do? That was to liberate Syria from ISIS, which we said at the time. And the reason I'm saying that is, while we have not predicted every little thing that's going to happen and who's going to be leading them and all this kind of stuff, one thing we've been very consistent on the narrative, and going back to all the shows we've done, going back the last several years, is that this region in particular, you're going to start to see a realignment of energy deals, predominantly energy and defense deals, mutual energy and mutual defense deals. And I'll pass it back to Ghost to get into how some of this region is aligning, specifically getting into kind of the cherry on top, which is the Mecca deal on Friday. I think that's a biggie. But we were projecting that this region, if we were right about a sovereign alliance, was going to start to realign as a region of responsibility. And the last point I'd make on it is, as I said a few minutes ago, one of the things I've been trying to rack my brain about, like you said, you didn't know, you're like, we didn't know that this Iran situation was going to happen. One of the things I was most surprised by is how long Trump has been willing to keep the narrative going. My personal answer, one of my answers for why has Trump been allowing this narrative to perpetuate as long as it has, he is allowing, in my opinion, this region to reorganize itself around the new paradigm, the new multipolar paradigm. The Iran war situation, and specifically the Strait of Hormuz narrative, is granting public mandate to everyone in the Middle East to realign away from the Strait of Hormuz, which is not to say that the Strait of Hormuz is not going to be used in the future, but clearly most people didn't know what that was 6 months ago. And now it has been a worldwide talking point. It's not just been a talking point in the US, guys, because Trump is the one waging the war. It's a talking point in Germany. It's a talking point in Syria. It's a talking point in Russia. All over the place, it's a talking point. Japan, China. The global energy shock that's come on the back of this situation has kicked all of these realignments and energy realignments into overdrive. And for people calling it a soap opera, yeah, the narrative is a soap opera, but this is where the proof is in the pudding. The pipelines, the energy deals, the defense pacts, those are actual treaties and actual projects that are now happening on the back of the Iran war narrative. So you can talk to some of those realignments that are going on, especially leading up to the one on Friday, which is a huge one that you drew in crayon several months in advance.
yeah, I did. Before we go there, though, share my screen, because it's funny you actually just said the soap opera thing. This is Golubov. This is the rug maker himself. This is the head of the Iranian parliament. He said this from 2 days ago. Enough with theater diplomacy. Iran's top negotiator to Trump. He posted this online. He said U.S. President Donald Trump should curb his theater diplomacy as it will not work with Iran. Trump announced on Saturday that he would call off a planned attack on Iran, which, according to him, would have been on a scale, quote, not seen since World War II, end quote. He claimed that he made the decision based because Washington and Tehran were close to reaching a diplomatic solution to the conflict in the Middle East. And the following days, the U.S. president insisted that the two sides were having very good discussions, but warned that Iran would be hit very hard if the Strait of Hormuz, through which around 1/5 of the world's seaborne oil passes, was not reopened very soon. Tehran has repeatedly denied holding any direct negotiations with the Americans. Golubov took to X on Thursday to berate Trump's approach to dealing with Tehran. Quote, this is what he posted. He says, massive attack incoming, ... Wait, never mind. They want to negotiate. That's theater diplomacy on loop. That was the post.
Yeah.
And then he went on to say, using bullying plus sign, broken promises plus sign, fake news as leverage is a failed strategy. And then Golubov advised Trump to instead, quote, acknowledge the facts and fulfill your commitments. We don't need any more theater. It's actually funny if you take what Golubov is saying and instead of applying it to President Trump, you just apply it to U.S. politicians in general and like how they approach all of this stuff normally, like George Bush, Obama, Clinton. It's a pretty accurate description of what they're doing, right? I mean, because Trump used to always say, like in 2015 and 2016, he's like, do y'all realize how stupid our State Department is? We literally will walk into a meeting with China. This is what, go back and watch Trump's old rallies. He's just speaking straight truth in those like early rallies. And he said, on China's side, they have these young guys who are probably all MBAs, who eat, sleep, and breathe that one deal probably for years leading up to that meeting. And they know everything about that deal. And then on the other side, we have Nancy Pelosi and John Kerry, like who literally have never even been in business, like negotiating for us. He's like, do you understand why China's taking our lunch? It's because of that. Like that. And then Nancy Pelosi and John Kerry go on television and have some stupid, like cutesy little term for whatever deal they just signed. And then the American people get fleeced in it. So I thought this was hilarious. I thought what
Oh
Golubov
yeah,
said was so funny. And it's like, is he being serious? Is this part of like kayfabe? Like, I don't
they're
really care.
flirting. They're
I
flirting.
don't I don't
That's
really
how I see
care.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't
yeah,
really care.
exactly.
It's like who cares? Like who cares if he's being serious? I
Yeah,
think he's accurately describing the way that like the US State Department typically engages in diplomacy, which is to have this performative soap opera moment of like this meeting, and then they turn around and they do the carrot and the stick, and they're like, all right, so you're going to do exactly what we want, or we're gonna kill you, and then your willing successor will be standing over your dead body and become president tomorrow. Which one do you want to do? Like
and ultimately,
that's normally how we negotiate with like
yeah.
lesser countries. Is we say do what we want, or we will
Mm-hmm.
kill you and your whole family, and then replace you with somebody else.
And here's what I will project as a very broad end to the narrative. I don't think it's going to be super dramatic, like maybe we originally thought. The end to the narrative, I mean, from the U.S. perspective of the
Mhm.
Iran war. I think Trump is just going to be like, all right, that's over now. And what's going to drive everyone crazy, this goes back to the point I was making a little bit ago of the central narrative is so bad for Trump right now. One of the other major reasons that doesn't worry me at all is because Goluboff, as you're saying, is pointing out that this is theater diplomacy. The Atlantic sometimes accidentally says the truth when they're trying to shit on Trump. The watchdogs are barking themselves hoarse. The scandals of the president's first term now seem quaint. What they're saying, and there's many other headlines like this going on right now in the intelligentsia, by the way, guys. What they are saying is they're already upset in advance of Trump withdrawing from the Iran war narrative and receiving no lasting political damage for having perpetuated it. And Trump knows he's not going to receive any damage. And I think the why gets into the realignment. I don't think it would be enough if Trump was just like, that's over now, who cares, it's all done.
Mm-hmm.
But if Trump says that's over now, who cares, it's all done, and on the back of it, he signs a bunch of deals in the Middle East, which we've been saying he's going to sign forever, everybody's going to forget about it because it's not going to matter. Not only is it not going to matter, but the end result, the projected end state, is going to be way better than the beginning state. There's going to be no war in the region, and we're going to have all these new reconstruction deals. By the way, these reconstruction deals is another thing that Con Inc. is trying to crap all over, and Israel's trying to crap all over in the region, which those reconstruction deals, they're not just for the Middle East. They're also for us. Those are going to be huge opportunities for us to be involved with when it comes to kind of rebalancing on this multipolar world vision, the reconstruction projects. That's why Trump is sending his building project and business deal guys over there. To your point about negotiations, I think the only real negotiations that are happening at this point are the negotiations about the reconstruction deal, not about the very real and not fake war.
Yeah, well, I think that you could be right about that. I also do think that people are like, I do think that there probably are some kinetic actions happening. I think that to whatever extent missiles are actually hitting Iran, it seems like the people who are being killed are the right people. I mean, this Kamal Karasi guy who was killed in April, who I just learned about the other day, was the chief architect of psychological warfare operations for Iran starting in 1979 when the Ayatollah became president. And he was solely responsible for all information that got out of Iran for several years, for like 10 years, meaning that he was responsible for framing how the West viewed Iran, despite the fact that he was educated in London and then got his doctorate in Houston at the University of Houston in 1976, like 4 years before that. So, and he was like a Westerner, like he dressed like in a Western suit all the time. Like he was one of those Iranians. Cause you either have like the clerics or you have like the guys in suits. He was one of the guys in suits. So that could be the case. I do want to get to what you said about, like how this ends. As I've said since the beginning, since like a year and a half ago, and I stick to it. I think that this is going to be Trump walking away from this. Like, I think, well, to your point, Trump's going to be like, yep, we're done. Cool. See ya. Going on to the next thing. Meanwhile, I mean, look at what's happening here. Netanyahu came out and said, we completely reject this new Gaza peace deal that Trump just announced last week that the Board of Peace just signed with Hamas. We're not doing it. We're not pulling the IDF out of Gaza. It's like Leonardo DiCaprio in Wolf of Wall Street. He's like,
Yeah,
I
I'm
ain't
not
leaving.
Yep,
ain't leaving.
and
I'm
this is
not leaving.
everywhere. This is being
Yeah.
picked up everywhere. So this is a big major sort of world news deployment. And yep, you've been saying it from the very beginning, and that's the first part of why I named this episode the final boss. And no, that doesn't mean I think Israel is the final boss. I more am talking about that from the perspective of proxy states and proxy wars, right? You could
I would
replace
say they're
you
the
could
final boss as it relates to the Middle East. As far as it relates to the Middle East, they
well
are definitely the final boss. But maybe for
they
the
are
world,
with that.
there's a bigger one. Yeah.
Yeah, they are with that. And I would also say, from a rhetorical perspective, from a narrative perspective, and from sort of a mass psychological perspective, you could say they are as well. And the reason I would say that is because, as you know, untangling that psyop is like the toughest one from a Western perspective, anyway. It's certainly
Yep.
not hard to untangle that psyop from an Eastern perspective, from the global East, but from the global West, that is the one narrative, or that is one of the major narratives that we have seen in our own sort of greater movement has created a lot of crash outs and a lot of friction. So, final boss, to your point, from a mechanistic, like regional perspective, you've got to rein them in or you're not going to have peace. That's just the way it is, any player in a specific region. But from a psychological perspective, a fifth gen warfare perspective, they're also a biggie because of all the programming that has gone into that proxy state and that proxy war and region for generations dating back to the close of World War II.
Yeah. And so, and that's why like all of my focus when it comes to analyzing this stuff is explicitly on what the leaders are doing, what the leaders are saying, like how they're interacting with one another, how they're interacting with the public, their specific actions. Because Carol J 64 in the chat says, I find it amazing that people who live thousands of miles away think they know what's really going on. That is exactly right. That's exactly right. Like, to Chris Paul's point, we don't know what's going on. Like, to think that because the television is telling us a story that's happening, it's actually happening, we don't know. There's no way for us to verify it. I mean, there are certain ways to verify certain events. Like if you have a cousin who lives in a one of these countries, and some people do, and they're like, oh yeah, my cousin lives in Beirut, and yeah, Beirut just got the shit bombed out of it by the IDF. It's like, okay, well, because I have heard that story. So it's like we can't verify what's going on over there, but I can verify what the leaders are doing. I can verify what the leaders are saying. I can verify, what narratives they're engaging with. How are they exploiting the situation? Are they pushing for more war? Are they pushing for more peace? That informs me on their character. It informs me on their motive. It informs me on what their agenda is. And before we get to the Mecca agreement, like share my screen, look at what was announced today. Russia signs agreement with Syria determining the future of regional bases and military cooperation, according to SANA. That's the Syrian news agency. So, and then it says Russian military bases in Syria will become centers for joint military training. And let me just show you a map of what this is. Okay, so here is Google Maps. Here, just to orient you, here's Syria. And here's the Syrian coast. It's relatively small compared to the rest of the country. So Russia, since the days of the Soviet Union, since I think like the 60s or 70s, Russia has had two bases in Syria. Latakia, right here, that's their air base. That's where they keep all of their aircraft. It's an air base. And then Tartus, which is their naval base. So they keep their ships here. And then from these two bases, all of their Africa operations, everything they do in Africa, because like I said with Sudan, the Sudan Navy base that they're building down there is their first military installation on the entire African continent ever. So this is how they've operated in Africa this entire time, is from Syria. And they were, purportedly driven out of these two bases when Jelani took over, a year and a half ago. The place I mentioned, the pipelines that they're running from Iraq to pipe oil over, that's going to be in Banias, which is this directly in between those two. So This is what the Syrian coast now looks like. You're going to have a huge Russian military presence right here in Latakia. You're going to have a huge Russian military presence down here in Tartus, and you're going to have their all of the oil refiner, like all of the oil that's coming out of the Persian Gulf and going to Europe is now going to be coming from to this port. It's now protected by the Russian military. And that means if the IDF tries to come in there and blow it up, which they're definitely going to try to do, the Russian military is going to be there to stop them.
And we've speculated going back almost 3 years now since the end of October 7th. You and I have talked about this a lot. What sort of escalation with regards to Israel from the central narrative perspective would grant Donald Trump the sort of shielding he would need? Now, we obviously don't think he needs that shielding, but if you did think he needed shielding to walk away from the table and say, knock it off, a little bit in more of a final manner than he already has several times with Israel throughout this conflict, the Russians getting involved and saying, hey, muzzle your dog. That is what we said. I think the first episode we did post, October 7th, when we were talking about this stuff, of saying, hey, how would you get Trump to kind of yank on the leash over there? It's probably not going to come through Iran. It's probably not going to come through the Middle Eastern players. We had speculated maybe the Saudis, although they seem to like to be the adult in the room. But we had said Russia. If Russia gets involved on any sort of military level, Trump can sell that narrative to the American people and to a conservative base of saying, listen, pragmatically, I have been trying to work with the Russians, and specifically, I've been trying to avoid conflict with the Russians. None of us want that. And now the Israelis are about to draw us into a conflict with them. So, we'll see. Maybe one of these proxies. And then one little point on Syria. Just don't forget, guys, that you're seeing the public announcement of deals between Syria and Iraq, Syria and Russia, while you're seeing the public announcement of deals between the U.S. and Iraq, the U.S. and Syria.
Yep.
Like, come on. Now, this is a real hot take. But if you are signing energy and defense pacts with a nation, and that nation is signing energy and defense pacts with Russia, you are actually not an adversary of Russia.
You're partnering with Russia.
You're partnering with Russia.
Yeah.
And these nations in the middle are links in the chain, because you don't sign deals with people that are signing deals the same week with who Con Inc. is telling you are their existential enemy. That's happening all over the place. And I'll lead that one step closer. Who has all the public deals with Iran? It's not us yet. The US doesn't have that yet. But who does have that? The Russians and the Chinese. Deal after deal after deal after deal. Civil nuclear energy program, mutual defense pacts, all this kind of stuff. Pipelines. If Trump is signing all of these deals to link chains to the multipolar alliance, the sovereign alliance, which we've been talking about for years, to Russia and China being the main other nodes in that alliance, if Russia and China already have chains going to Iran, Trump is going to sign the deal with them. That's why it's not just casting entrails and making shit up. Look at the deals from one side of the chain. Look at the deals from the other side of the chain. And now imagine those two sides of the chain being linked together. It's like, it really sometimes, we obviously talk about a lot of stuff like a geopolitical stuff that you have to be following it to know all these different deals and corridors. But it's amazing that Fox News can have a straight face talking about the threat that the Russians pose while we're signing deals with all of their new allies. So it just, these things don't make any sense unless, of course, the sovereign alliance is real. And meanwhile, Israel are not the only ones who've been humiliated through this whole thing. NATO has been maybe the biggest loser, which does take us, if you want to get into the Mecca agreement that kind of links all this together.
Well, before we do, one last thing is let's just finish up the Israel thing, and then we'll move to the Muslims. So the way that I see this playing out is I see it playing out like Trump walking away from the situation. Like Trump, and I think certain people have been saying this for a while, like Joe Kent. I know people get triggered about Joe Kent. I mean, I personally think Joe Kent is out there telegraphing a message that Tulsi Gabbard is also like, basically he's telegraphing what Tulsi Gabbard probably discussed. And that I think is an extension of what President Trump's going to do, which is just to walk away and be like, yep, we won, victory, see you later. That's what Joe Kent's been saying since the moment he resigned, is that President Trump has a historic opportunity to just walk away from all this, claim victory, and move on. And he'll be loved for it. I think that's what's going to happen. At the same time, I think Israel is going to plow ahead with the war, and they're going to be basically left fighting all the Muslims plus Russia. And the signal that you're going to see that is coming from Laura Loomer. Laura Loomer has spent the past 3 weeks. She went to Ukraine and interviewed the leader of the Azov battalion. She interviewed Zelensky. She was like, I didn't realize how brainwashed I was about this whole thing. Russia is so evil. We have to kill Putin. She literally said Trump should kill Putin. Yeah. I mean, even General Flynn stepped in and was like,
the assassination of the second most powerful or third most powerful leader in the world.
Yeah, and even General Flynn stepped in and was like, this is really irresponsible considering like how you're kind of in the orbit of Trump, and like you saying this is really, really irresponsible considering how ostensibly close you are with Trump. You should not be saying this. And then she, of course, did her whole psychosis rant against General Flynn, because that's just her character. But she's telling you exactly what Mossad is thinking, because I do think she works for Mossad. That's their intent. Russia has always been Israel's enemy. I've been saying this for years. Russia has always been their enemy. And I do think this ends with Russian forces on the ground fighting the IDF in Syria. I said that to
unless
CanCon.
They just back off. Unless they just,
No, I don't think. I don't think they're going to. I personally think that Netanyahu is going to say we're going full tilt, and there's enough zealots that are around him. Because I was telling Alpha this earlier, Trump has radicalized their entire political spectrum, because now you have the guy who's running against him as the favorite to win the premiership in October, Naftali Bennett. He is now openly saying, this guy was like pivoting, he was like, oh yeah, we'll sign a peace deal with Palestine. Like we'll do the two-state solution just so we can move on from it. That was him 2 years ago. Now he's saying there is not going to be a Palestine. We're going to erase it from the map. It's going to become part of Israel. It's always been part of Israel. And all the things that Netanyahu's promising you, a war with Lebanon, a war with Syria, a war with Iran, I will give you those things, minus all the baggage that Netanyahu has, minus the arrest warrants that he has, minus, all the bad blood he's created between Israel and the rest of the world. By the way, we could also have a war with Turkey. Like, think about that. Like, he's been the one pushing for that. So it's like, no matter what happens in October with their elections, you're going to get somebody in office who wants to go full tilt, into the lion's den and kill all the lions. And we all know how that's going to end. Here, to that point, I just saw this as I was preparing to say that. Here's Barack Ravid, who has like the inside track, like the ear of Trump, and like Trump tells him this stuff, and so does Trump's people in the White House. A senior U.S. official told me the White House, quote unquote, is not bothered by Netanyahu's statement on the Gaza plan and sees it as part of the election season in Israel. Quote, we understand Bibi's political needs. We have no problem with it as long as he continues to do what we ask, especially regarding restraining attacks in Gaza. The U.S. official said last week Netanyahu spoke on the phone with President Trump's envoy, Jared Kushner, and promised to give the 15-point plan a chance despite his skepticism and curb attacks on Gaza so that the process of demilitarization of Gaza can begin, a U.S. official said. Since then, Israel has conducted attacks on Gaza, and the IDF is gradually moving back to the yellow line. At the same time, the U.S. and the mediators are demanding that Hamas begins disarming. So pretty much what we're being told here is like what Trump is doing is he's basically like, yeah, whatever, Netanyahu, do what you got to do, bro. Like, go on. Like, we're not going to help you, but go on, dude. Do what you got to do. And it's like, okay, they're going to just keep walking straight into the lion's den as we're backing out, as we're like walking out of the cave, and then the door slams shut and suddenly they're going to be surrounded by lions. It's like, that is absolutely the trajectory that we're on here. How it ends is anybody's guess, but I don't think this ends with everyone being like, okay, like we're going to have peace. Yeah. There's going to be a dramatic moment that I think ends with the abolition of the Zionist state of Israel, like where we don't have the Jewish supremacy state. We might have a country called Israel that is just a normal place to live. But right now, what we have is a hyper fascist theocracy. Everything they describe Iran as being is actually what Israel is, where they arrest journalists for reporting the truth on what the military is doing, the truth on what the government's doing. If you don't have the approval of the IDF to post something about what they're doing, they will literally arrest you and throw you in prison.
Half of our Congress wants to do that to us on behalf of them as well.
Yes.
So it's this we've been talking about the whole time. Everything you just said there leads us into, let's hit two final things, because for us that's 45 minutes.
Yep.
That brings us perfectly into two topics I want to hit on this half of. We're going to do a two-parter, including next week. Part one, that brings us into the Mecca deal.
Yep.
And then part two, it brings us into Ukraine. We might not finish talking about Ukraine tonight, but there's always going to be stuff to talk about there, because there's a convergence in these proxy wars, which is why I called it the final boss. But before that, now I agree with you in terms of we don't know what shape this is actually going to take. We don't know what kinetic actions are or are not going to happen. I agree with you that the narrative on the world stage is going to be dramatic. Israel is going to force a dramatic narrative. I do agree that Donald Trump is going to walk away from that narrative, but he's going to walk away pointedly, right? Like, I think we're probably saying the same thing. This isn't going to be a thing where Trump just walks away sheepishly and kind of withdraws from the room and backs out in the Homer Simpson meme. This is more going to be a Trump flips up the table. And by the way, I think Trump has already beta tested this walk away rhetoric a couple of times during the Iran conflict. Keep in mind, for Trump to have said the things he has said about Israel on at least two occasions during this Iran war, that is fairly unprecedented for a modern American president. To say, I mean, he said the infamous one months ago, they don't know what the fuck they're doing. This was actually a long time ago. But then a couple of times during this specific conflict, most infamously 1 or 2 months ago, all these reports that Trump then corroborated, where he was supposedly on the phone with Bibi Netanyahu and told him, you're effing insane. What the F are you doing when it comes to Iran, right? So he's already, in my view, beta tested the MAGA base with how does the MAGA base react, the Zionist MAGA base react when the leader of the MAGA movement goes super hard in the paint on Israel in the central narrative. And then Trump would then massage the narrative another day later. Oh, well, they're still our greatest ally. Like, sometimes allies get heated. Sometimes mom and dad fight. That's kind of how he frames it. But I think those narrative deployments were basically beta tests. And I do think that there will be a very dramatic version of this where maybe it's the Russians entering the board. Maybe it's Turkey. Maybe who knows what it is. But there's going to be a massive escalation that Israel is seen as the provocateur or aggressor of. And that Trump is going to very pointedly, you say walk away from the table, but abandon them, I think is really what it's going to look like on the world stage. And I think Trump is going to essentially say that. And that leads us into what I want to talk about with the Mecca deal, which is that it seems that the only reason I'm not disagreeing with you, I'm just saying I leave open the possibility that we don't get kinetic escalation. If the game board is so rearranged in that region, wherein even the IDF, once they lose the public support of the Americans, realize we are playing an existential game right now and we just lost our last backstop. And I think stuff like Mecca happening last Friday starts to get you a little bit closer to that. But why don't you tell people what happened on Friday with Mecca? Why is it a big deal? And how does it relate to how Israel chooses to play the region in the next, few months?
Yeah, that's a great framing. And by the way, consider this, because I do buy into Chris Paul's like our boy Yuhu, which was Chris Paul totally takes credit for that. He saw that before I did. And we're in complete agreement on that. I mean, whether or not Netanyahu's read in on it doesn't really matter. It could be game theory. It could be he's part of the team. But consider this outcome. What if Netanyahu loses the election in October and then Naftali Bennett takes power, throws Netanyahu in prison, and then goes full tilt against Iran? and Trump's been able to say, you threw my boy in prison.
Right.
I'm done with you, and then walks away. Like that, it could play out like that.
Then we'll talk about narrative shielding. Narrative shielding. There's a reason. It's not just us. There's a reason Donald Trump props these characters up. The Our Boy refrain started with Our Boy Blue, obviously, stateside. The second guy that I applied that to was Zelensky, which is highly relevant here. And to your point, Chris has been pointing it out with Netanyahu of fitting perfectly into that template, which has never been to say, by the way, guys, and I know most of the narrative audience and your audience understands this, and Chris's audience, but there are always some people who are like, what do you mean our boy Bibi? What do you mean our boy Zelensky? We are not saying these are good guys. We are saying Trump and or the Sovereign Alliance have control of these guys. These guys are leveraged. They are boxed in, and they've only got two paths ahead of them, and they're going to choose the easier one. But yeah, that's a great framing of if they, our boy Yuhu could complete his arc by granting Trump the final narrative shielding, which retroactively would help to codify and embolden or reinforce why something that has confused us at times has been how breathlessly Trump has been defending that specific guy in the central narrative. If he knows that's what's going to happen, that grants him the perfect escape route, to your point.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so now let's go to the Mecca agreement. So the Mecca agreement, this is like the crown drawing that you referenced. The architecture, like security architecture that I saw coming into place very early this year, January of this year, just based on what the leaders were saying, just based on what they were doing, just based on what made the most sense, based on who had the good relationships with President Trump, Erdogan, MBS, and Sharif. Sharif is the prime minister of Pakistan. You'll recall that last September, when Trump did the 20-point Gaza peace plan, we went to Egypt to sign the whole thing. And all the European NATO leaders got up on stage and stood behind Trump. And Trump literally goes, he's like, I don't know why y'all are on stage. Like nobody told you to do this, but fine. It was all the European guys were behind him. And he was like, who invited y'all to this thing? Y'all, you don't even need to be here. But they all were like, oh, we got to be here for this. The one person that Trump let speak, he was like, there is somebody I want to say something, like Sharif, like you come up and speak. And so the Pakistani prime minister got up and he choked up when he was talking about Trump, talking about how amazing Trump was, how he was the only person with the right personality, the right charisma, the right man in the right moment to bring all these different people together and make this happen, make peace in the Middle East happen. Very obvious that it was like an emotional moment between Sharif and Trump. So we got Trump and Sharif, we got Trump and MBS, we got Trump and Erdogan. Trump's always said nice things about al-Sisi. That's the general of Egypt that we backed, the U.S. military backed in a counterinsurgency against the Muslim Brotherhood in 2013 and installed him as president. So it just made sense to me that, okay, we're going to see a security architecture emerge with Saudi Arabia probably at the middle because they're the ones who have a ton of political clout. They have obviously are like the bank, they have the bankroll. It makes sense that they would be the ones cutting a deal with Pakistan, cutting a deal with Turkey.
And they have the relations with the U.S. I think that the other leaders would find very, amenable to the future dealings with the U.S.
And we've seen them summon the whole Muslim world over and over again to their palace in Riyadh and be like, here's what's going to happen. And one of the times they did that, by the way, it was a ruse to arrest a lot of these guys in the Saudi purge, because it wasn't just Saudis who were arrested in that. It was foreigners who were in the palace who were grabbed because they were part of this whole Al-Qaeda, ISIS network. So it just made sense to me that that's what we're going to see. That's exactly what this is. This is an agreement. I have a video. We can just play this in the background while we're talking. This is right.
So it's a security agreement architecture between Turkey, Pakistan, and Saudi Arabia is what we got if anybody missed that, it's what we got the announcement of on Friday.
Yeah.
Which is
so here, those three guys that I mentioned, there's Erdogan. We've seen Erdogan come to the White House. He was, the red carpet was rolled out for him back in September. That was when Trump signed the nuclear agreement with him. We're going to build a nuclear reactor in Turkey for them. Obviously, MBS is the guy in Saudi Arabia. When he came in November, That was when we had the horse-drawn carriages, we had the jets flying overhead. It was like we, Trump threw a whole party for him, right? That all the elites wanted to come to, and then there's Sharif right there. That's the guy who got up and got all choked up in Egypt when they were signing the agreement. So it's there was a lot of debate about what this thing was, like in the media and on X. It's like, what is this? Is this just like, is this performative? Is this real? Hakan Fidan, who is the Turkish foreign minister, has come out and he's done some interviews and he's explained what this all is. He specifically said, this is absolutely there he is right there. His back's to us. That's Hakan Fidan. He said, this is in Article 5, like the same thing as Article 5 in NATO. If you attack Saudi Arabia, you're at war with Turkey and Pakistan. Pakistan is the 5th largest country by population in the world, 241 million people. It is the only Muslim country with nuclear weapons. Whether or not you believe in them doesn't matter. That's what the narrative is. And Turkey is the largest military in NATO outside of the U.S. It's the largest military in Europe, period. And it's the largest it's the largest military in Europe because it's considered part of Europe because it's an observing member of the European Union. So it's like halfway in the European Union. So it's considered the largest military in Europe. It's also considered the largest military by number of soldiers in the Middle East. Because even though Iran is more powerful than Turkey in terms of its capability, Turkey has more soldiers than Iran does. So it is a very, very important military. So this architecture that they've created is extremely important. Now, we mentioned Egypt. They were part of that. The crown drawing that I made back then. Here is Hakan Fidan in this interview he does on Turkish television, and he says, Egypt is our natural partner on all issues. I believe that in the next phase, Egypt will also join us as part of the alliance. There are a few technical matters involved. Once these are implemented, there is no reason why Egypt should not be part of it as well. So we're going to see Egypt join in a matter of days or weeks. They're going to be a part of this thing. In the same interview, here he is. He says, Turkey informed Iran about the Mecca alliance before signing, and Iran might join later. The quote is, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman told this to President Trump directly in their meeting that military intervention in Iran is not a solution in any way, and this issue must be resolved through dialogue and agreement. So there's been this whole movement on X over the weekend to frame this, and a lot of people coming in my replies. These are the people who've all blackpilled on Trump, who've all are like Trump is a Jewish puppet, all that stuff, and saying that this is an alliance against, like, for Israel against Iran, and now they got them boxed in, and they're gonna attack Iran from all sides. No, bullshit. Pakistan was the mediator for Iran, like the whole MOU that Trump signed with Iran. Pakistan was the mediator. Saudi Arabia restored relations with them in 2023 after the October 7th attack for the first time since 1979. They didn't have a relationship since 1979, and he restored the relations in November 2023. And then Turkey, Erdogan, you'll recall the whole narrative that we were going to arm the Kurds and we were going to send the Kurds into Iran to be the ground force. It was Erdogan who stopped that. And the official narrative is that J.D. Vance went to Erdogan and said, hey, the people in the CIA and the State Department are trying to do this in Mossad, stop it. And he went and stopped it because we were going to go into southwest Turkey. That's where we have a huge NATO presence. And whenever we want to arm the Kurds, that's where we go. We go to the Kurds in southwest Turkey. They're, longtime allies of ours. And we send them into Iraq. We send them into Syria. We send them into Turkey. We send them into Iran, whatever. That's the history there. And so Erdogan's the one who rug pulled that. We also learned from Pezeshkian like 2 weeks ago, maybe a week ago. He said that Erdogan and the Turks have been helping the Iranians blow up a bunch of foreign terrorist groups that are operating north of Tehran inside of Iran. So my guess is that those groups are probably Ukrainian. That's my guess. We've also been seeing for the past few weeks, you've been seeing it, that I've been putting it in the news brief, that more and more Ukraine are blowing up, or they're attacking Turkish cargo ships.
We're going to get to that as our last. That's our last one. So a little button on this one. And so the Mecca agreement's obviously a huge deal. By the way, and I know it sounds like a little bit of a stretch, but I can't help it sometimes when it comes to specific terminology that's being used. You just mentioned using the term in the next phase, right? Like in the next phase, we're going to have Egypt in the deal. In the next phase, we're going to have this. Now, 2 levels. Number one, that sounds like somebody who knows that there are multiple phases to what is unfolding here, right? I mean, a lot of times these geopolitical agreements, as you said, there's a lot of FUD that goes around. Is it a real agreement? Is it going to hold? Is this just posturing? Is it politicking? Not only is it a real agreement that's Article 5 style in the Middle East, that's unprecedented, literally, but it's clearly a phased agreement that has multiple actors coming in here. What does that sound like? Sounds kind of like what Donald Trump has been saying going back years and years about the New Abraham Accords. Now, are they going to be called that? I don't know. It's just overall structure. He's been talking about an architecture of peace in that region. And he has also projected in advance, including this year, while being in a very serious war with them, that Iran would be part of that agreement. He wants Iran to be part of that agreement in the future. So just last point on the phase thing is that I had pointed out in the Ukraine theater as well, several actors in that theater, including Donald Trump, Vladimir Putin, and Volodymyr Zelensky, have used the term, in the final phase, there will be an agreement. And, you know, you could say, oh, laugh that off, and that's what anybody would say, but it's fairly specific terminology, and I think sometimes it's when they're giving you these hints in between the beats that these Sovereign Alliance-themed nations, they all kind of know where the board is tilting. They all know who's going to be part of these agreements, and, you know, the timing is the thing that's not always set in stone.
Yeah, I want to address a comment from YouTube because this is a question. This is the question that I get the most whenever I'm talking about this stuff, and I understand where it comes from. I understand the frustration. It's from Fabuloso Vibes, and they say we take on Iran, yet we've given up cities to Islam and have allowed 200 plus mosques in our own country. What are our priorities? Okay, so it's really important to understand why this has happened. And I actually I think I have it right here. Because it's probably better for you to hear it from me than hear it from him than from me. Yeah, here it is. Here's Charlie Kirk addressing where this influx of Muslims in the U.S. came from.
Jewish communities have been pushing the exact kind of hatred against whites that they claim to want people to stop using against them. Now, I don't like generalizations. Not every Jewish person believes that. But it is true the Anti-Defamation League was part and parcel with Black Lives Matter. It is true that some of the largest financiers of left-wing anti-white causes have been Jewish Americans. They went all in on woke, and it wasn't just ADL. It was some of the top Jewish organizations in the country that have done that. In fact, we have seen this with the recent retreat of Jewish donations that are no longer going to be administered to colleges, right? Mark Rowan, Leon Kopperman. Can we get that full list? It's very powerful. The part of so that's totally true. And by the way, Tucker Carlson reinforces this. So I'm going to it was quite a day on the internet. Tucker Carlson was interviewing Candace Owens. We have Candace Owens coming up next hour. And Tucker Carlson mentions that Jewish Americans have primarily been financing cultural Marxist ideas. We said this, by the way, last week, and people came after us.
We were on top of it.
We actually said it in a different way. We said, I'm glad that Jewish Americans are reconsidering their financing of cultural Marxism. And people misunderstood it intentionally and slandered us as being anti-Semites. But listen to this. Tucker Carlson is completely correct by saying this, that the philosophical foundation of anti-whiteness has been largely financed by Jewish donors in the country.
And that I don't think that was the right one. There's one other one that I want to play because this is important to understand how we're going to undo all this. So let me pull up this one. This is probably from the same week or whatever he was talking about this.
The ADL, by the way, has spent decades. The ADL raises nearly $100 million a year to just quote unquote fight anti-Semitism. They've been oddly quiet recently. Why? It's because they're only focused on random conservatives in middle America. The ADL makes liberals think that random Trump voters in Idaho want to do a second Holocaust when the Jew haters were right in front of them the whole time. In fact, the ADL demanded we let the Jew haters in. And in a stunning turn of events, the people that the ADL said were Jew haters are actually the biggest defenders of Judaism in Israel right now in the country. Us, conservative evangelical Christians. And Jewish donors, they have a lot of explaining to do, a lot of decoupling to do, because Jewish donors have been the number one funding mechanism of radical, open border, neoliberal, quasi-Marxist policies, cultural institutions, and nonprofits. This is a beast created by secular Jews. And now it's coming for Jews, and they're like, what on earth happened? And it's not just the colleges. It's the nonprofits, it's the movies, it's Hollywood, it's all of it.
Yeah. So the reason that I play Charlie Kirk and not just explain it to you myself, which I certainly could do, is I don't think anybody in their right mind is accusing Charlie Kirk of being an anti-Semite. I mean, some people are, but I think say what you want about Charlie Kirk, he's above reproach when it comes to being called an anti-Semite, and he is openly telling you Jewish billionaires have been funding radical open border policies and bringing these people into your country. How do you get them to go back? Well, you stabilize the Middle East, you make it a prosperous place, you sign a bunch of energy deals, you make it like Europe, right? Not in the culture like Europe, but I'm saying you make it stable in a nice place to live. And then guess what? All those people who are building whatever Paradise City in Texas are going to go back to Syria because they're going to stop. They're going to lose the USAID money. And they're going to be pressured into leaving because not only are they going to need to leave if we, follow through on the illegal migration stuff and undo everything that happened during the Biden administration, but also just the pressure of preserving American culture, which we need to do, and not just allowing it to be erased by whoever shows up tomorrow from whatever country. That's a very, very important mission that we all have to take on ourselves.
You and I, not this weekend, but 2 weeks ago on the Blitz, actually did most of the episode about that. We were specifically talking about it through the lens of a blue-collar boom, a manufacturing boom in the U.S., and we were also talking about the controversial comments that Mike Lindell made 2-3 weeks ago, where he was essentially talking about not just incentivizing self-deportations, but also creating on-ramps for illegal immigrants that were working in the United States for permanent resident status, and that got him in a lot of hot water with MAGA, but it got him in a lot of hot water with a lot of NGOs. And Ghost and I had an hour-long discussion on that on the Substack a couple of weeks ago on the Blitz, and we were both making that point that, first of all, you've got to, yes, you need to police your own borders. Yes, you need to deport people, especially criminals. That's a non-starter. We all agree with that. But you also do need to take some responsibility for the role that the West, specifically Western intelligence, has played in the destabilization of these regions, and specifically in the radicalization of these regions. And that's one of the things that this community, not everyone I'm saying, but pockets of this community have the hardest time with and get the most crazy about. I even jumped onto OnlyLands in the last hour on Friday night because I just couldn't listen to it anymore, but they were all arguing about that. And, we've got Alpha banging the drum of violent Islam extremism and everything. And that's rhetoric that's going on right now, and it makes sense from a certain point of view, and it's real in certain situations. But what's important is what you're pointing out there, what Charlie Kirk is pointing out, and what I'm pointing out, which is that, first of all, who is letting all of these people in? Who is fomenting the movements and the color revolutions that are getting all these people in? Second of all, how do we get them out? Why are they radicalized? Why are they this way? Is it just because Islam is a radical religion? The people that already just have that in their mind, we can't disabuse them of that. You've banged your head into this wall for years. The people that are like, Muslims are violent savages. Many of them will watch a show like this. They'll be like, MBS, that's our boy. And then we'll be like, but you said that his entire religion is backwards, violent, secular, whatever.
And there are Muslims who are like that. There are absolutely Muslims. And guess what? When Trump says they're sending their worst people, they're emptying out their prisons and sending them to where? Not just the U.S. They're sending them to Britain. They're sending them to France. And then those are the people that you're seeing do this terrible stuff in Europe. It's like that's real. The worst of the worst.
Yes, and it's real, and I want to send this point back to you.
Yeah.
It's absolutely real. And my final point would be, so number one, we need to incentivize them, right? Who's fomenting the extremism? Who's helping to foment the extremism? Number two, who is giving them a pathway into the West? Right now, we're mostly seeing that in mainland Europe or in Suda, however the hell you pronounce it, is the big inflection point, the flashpoint right now. Number three, and this is the biggest point for me, who wants you to be super angry about that? Who is causing them to want to leave their countries? Who is allowing them or accelerating their pathway into your country? What do they want you to feel about it? They want you to be angry. They want you to be extreme. They want you to get violent, or they want you to feel violent, or
what you scared.
What I was listening to on Friday night and why I wanted to jump on. And by the way, Ash was doing a good job, and if I just was feeling like a shit disturber, what they want you to do, in my opinion, what these people that Charlie Kirk is talking about, what they want you to do in the MAGA movement is they want you to beg the government to start regulating belief systems and religions. Which, hey, I'll throw Alpha under the bus because he threw himself under the bus. He's a big boy. He was defending himself to me. He's defending himself to you guys. A lot of you guys agreed with him. Alpha thinks we should do that. Thinks we should start giving the government some powers over religions, some powers over this kind of stuff. Tricky situation to get into there.
Slippery
to say
slope,
the least.
guys. Slippery slope. Yep.
Slippery slope there. But, you know, Alpha can defend himself, and I don't want to misrepresent
the Republicans
him
the Republicans are going to be the ones, the responsible adults. The
Yes. Republicans
are going to be the ones who do it, BB. So
No, and
as long as we only give the Republicans the power to do it, they will be responsible. They would never, ever shut down a Christian church. They would never tell Christians they weren't allowed to practice their religion.
Yeah,
but
and you know, I don't want to
you forget what happened with the Patriot Act. Like that was the argument. That was the argument with the Patriot Act. That it's the Republicans wielding the power. They would never. These are for terrorists. They would never turn those powers on the Americans. It's exactly what the Biden administration did, by the way, with January 6th. Exactly. They used the Patriot Act against all of you.
And this is the exact point that I've said to your point about the Patriot Act. I have not been saying this about Donald Trump. I've been saying this in 2026 about large swaths of the MAGA base. And one of the things I've said in 2026 is I have never felt more like my former liberal self than I have in 2026. And it's because if you took the former liberal version of me and put me on OnlyLands on Friday night, I think I would have advanced almost the same argument that I'm advancing as a MAGA, like, truth community sovereign alliance maximalist now. And when you, as a self-described MAGA or conservative or whatever, are sounding like that to people like us, you took somebody's bait. And I think that's where both things can be true. It can be true that there are extreme Islamist influences and brigades and groups coming in to the West, but it is also true that their pathway is being greased, is being accelerated, and that narrative is being fomented by people who want us in a holy war. Because probably the last, and you've been saying this for years, Chris Paul's been saying this as well, the last break glass in case of emergency the globalist superstate has to stop basically the crystallization of what we see as a golden age in a multipolar world is a holy war. That's kind of one of their last break glass in case of emergency type of things. So you just got to be careful when you're retweeting, look at these like brown people climbing over the battlements in Morocco, but it's also Spain, and they're invading and they're going to kill everybody, and the guys in Belfast are cutting off people's heads. That's all crazy shit, and it makes everybody super angry, and they should be deported. But you got to be careful when you're watching what are the main narratives that are being promoted on the back of this. Does it seem like the people promoting these narratives want you to live peacefully? Or do they want to sort of provoke you into a new crusade? Both sides into a new crusade. I would say that's one of their last ditch efforts to get everybody off of the same page. And, you know, you don't see Trump might touch some of these narratives. He certainly plays with the open borders thing. He certainly plays with Islamic extremism from a narrative perspective, while he's signing world-altering peace deals with the most powerful Islamic nations in the world. So,
Yeah.
I like
Yeah.
the way Trump handles this and not the way certain others handle it.
All right. So I have, because I know we're coming up against the clock here. I have something that can connect basically everything that we've discussed here, and bring it all home to like Russia, Ukraine, Europe. So this is Israeli Diaspora Affairs Minister Amichai Chikli. I will explain who that guy is. This guy has been doing this for months. I've been tracking all of his stuff. I've been sharing it. He is the Diaspora Affairs Minister, meaning his job is to reach out, like communicate with the diaspora, which is, the Jewish community around the world, specifically the elites, because you got to think that like the people he's speaking to are like the people with money, the people with clout, the people with power, and then basically represent their interests at home in the Israeli government. That's really what his job is. Okay. So he has been out there on the forefront communicating in public, saying, we need to fight a war with Turkey. We need to, we need to fight a war with Iran before the Iranian war. He's been out there like being the mouthpiece for the Jewish elite who live outside of Israel. And so when he speaks, I listen, because that's basically what his job is to like tell us what the Jewish elite outside of Israel want. So here's what he says. He says, the Mecca alliance is a very dangerous and very troubling development. Saudi Arabia was essentially sitting on the fence. It already had a defense agreement with Pakistan, but the moment it goes with the Turks, who are in a direct confrontation with us, one that could develop to dimensions that may have extremely serious consequences, both in the Mediterranean and on the Syrian front. This is a development that is very, very bad for us, for Israel. It requires us to deepen our alliances with Greece and Cyprus, the UAE, and Somaliland. And I mean, the one that should stick out to you among all those is Greece, because I think I've told you on this show, if I haven't, then certainly on the Blitz, that my theory is that we're going to see Greece attack Turkey. If not Greece, then Cyprus, which is basically like an extension of Greece. And I'll show you this map. The map that I said this back in, I can't remember, months ago, June or May or June. If I were Netanyahu, I would look at allying with Greece and Ukraine against Turkey and basically opening up a new front, opening up a naval front, because they can't afford another ground war, and basically distract Turkey, because Turkey and Israel have been exchanging a lot of fiery rhetoric about what they're going to do. And now all of a sudden you get Ukraine attacking Turkish ships, and it seems like we might see something happen in like the Mediterranean between Cyprus and Turkey, or maybe Greece and Turkey. So I don't know. That's what I'm keeping my eye on. That we're going to see some sort of pivot on behalf of Israel, maybe from Ukraine, maybe from Greece, maybe from Cyprus, against Turkey specifically. And the reason they're singling out Turkey is because Turkey is a very close ally of Russia. Now Turkey is a close ally of Saudi Arabia and Pakistan, and that puts Turkey right in the crosshairs of people who already have been saying. Amichai Chikli was one, Naftali Bennett's been another, who have been saying for months, we need to go to war with Turkey. They are the next Iran. That's what they said. The next Iran is Turkey. So, and then we know how President Trump feels about Turkey. We know he loves Erdogan. So, I mean, I think that this is like, we're seeing a lot of escalation here in the narrative, and that might translate to escalation, at least in the narrative, kinetically.
Damn straight. I want to use that to set up next week, which we're going to have some closing thoughts. For us, that could be another 2 hours, but I'm going to do that after I thank a couple of sponsors, and then we're going to get back to it. And I am going to roast some of you guys in the chat as well, which is usually what I like to do as my parting shot. It's a really good way to build your brand, is just to make sure everybody's mad at you while you're getting off the show every week. So you should try it. I know you never make anybody upset with any of your opinions, but I'm going to teach you how to do that. So first up, we are brought to you by ourselves. Guys, the tickets for Gart Vegas, I know John told you every day, every week, every hour of every day and every week that they were going to be on sale since many moons ago, but they really are on sale now. Gart Vegas, is happening September 17th through the 19th. Join us at the Ahern. Go to badlandsmedia.tv/events. You've got your in-person tickets, your VIP tickets, your virtual tickets. Virtual tickets are on sale for $25 right now through August 15th, which is just this week, the end of this week. So then they'll go up to 35, so you can get like 35% off on those right now. You get access to a Telegram group that will open probably the week of the event. The Telegram group for Deadwood is still open. It's still bumping. It's kind of basically becomes the Badlands chat room in between Garts. And then we migrate everybody over to the new one. So jump into that. But come see us. Come see us in Vegas. badlandsmedia.tv/events. That should be pretty fun. And we are also brought to you by ourselves in the form of Soft Disclosure.
Soft Disclosure deodorant is made with purity-tested ingredients like organic arrowroot powder, magnesium hydroxide, and nourishing plant oils. This deodorant keeps you fresh without covering up the truth. Activated charcoal works like a magnet to help draw out impurities, while green matcha tea brings antioxidant power to protect and calm skin. Aluminum-free, stain-free, and formulated to last up to 2 months of daily use.
Whole bus fresh, no steak on me. Soft Disclosure got me clean. Fresh so loud, can't compete. Mint, lemon, grapefruit, lavender tea.
It helps fight odor without blocking the body's natural sweat. And every purchase helps support 6 American small businesses. Buy 2 deodorants, get a free lip balm. Or visit softdisclosure.com and use promo code FRESH for 15% off.
What are you doing?
Soft Disclosure got me clean. Fresh so loud, can't compete.
My goodness. Young Jatriot. Love to see it. Check out Soft Disclosure. Every bottle you buy supports us as well. And it's just some good stuff. And our final sponsor for tonight's show is our friends at Rumble. And that is specifically our friends at Rumble Wallet. And of course, I misplaced the read for this, but I might be able to stall long enough to grab it. So let me continue to do that. I've done this. Okay, we hear a lot about crypto, but here's the part most people miss. Crypto was created so you could actually own and control your money. After the 2008 financial crisis, Bitcoin was designed as an alternative to banks. So instead of a bank holding your money, delaying transfers, or limiting access, you're in control. And if you've ever had to wait for a transfer to clear, you felt that problem. Now fast forward to today, and everyone's heard of crypto, but getting started still feels complicated. That's exactly why we use Rumble Wallet. Takes all the complexity and makes it simple. Choose what you want: Bitcoin, dollar-backed stablecoins, and even digital gold backed by real gold. No complicated setup. It connects with MoonPay, so you can use your credit card, debit card, or bank and be up and running in minutes. Once you're set up, you can even support your favorite Rumble creators like those at Badlands directly. So do this now. Scan the QR code or click the link in the description and download the Rumble Wallet. From there, you can set up your wallet, tap buy, and you're in the game. In just a few minutes, you can go from hearing about crypto to actually owning some. So thank you to Rumble. Thank you to Rumble Wallet. And despite all the Bitcoin snafus over the last few weeks, we've just held steady in this grinding zone. So last couple thoughts before we get out of here, and we'll set up next week's show. When I said I was going to, set off the chat, hey, it's good to have these arguments. I'm more than willing to have the arguments, but I see a lot of people being upset about Sharia law, this kind of stuff. Sharia law is being practiced in the United States. My point, guys, in the argument on Friday night is about whether or not we enforce certain things. So yes, there are Muslims practicing versions of Sharia law in the United States, which is unconstitutional and illegal. And obviously, I believe that should be enforced. I believe criminals should be deported. I believe criminals should be tried. I believe our Constitution should be enforced, which is not a controversial take and is something that everybody in this audience agrees with. What is shocking to me is that some of these people can't follow on that conversation by saying, if you guys are saying they're doing it anyway, against the direction of the Constitution and American law, your solution is to change those laws in order to ban groups of people. or belief
Yeah,
systems.
you're saying that we need new laws as opposed to just enforcing the laws that already exist.
Exactly.
That our government's not enforcing. Yeah.
Sharia law is not allowed in the United States. It is illegal. It is unconstitutional.
Yes.
Now, what I would
Yes.
agree with you guys on is that culturally, it should be shamed. It should be mocked.
It has no
and
place
it has
in the
no
United
place.
States. It has no place.
It has no place here.
It has no place in the Middle East. The Middle East
No.
doesn't want it either. The Middle East doesn't
That's why
want it
it's
either.
here. That's why
go
it's
look-
here.
Dude, look up Rashid Rida, guys. RIDA. Okay, the early Salafist in his relationship with Evelyn Baring, the British oligarch they put in charge of Egypt, where he came in the 1880s, and he said, "You know what? All of you have illiterate children in Egypt. We're going to build schools because we can't have your kids being illiterate." And guess who they put in charge of those schools? These radical clerics who were so radical they were thrown out of their own tribes. Rashid Rida, who came in and then taught the kids radical Islam. The British paid for all of this. And then from these schools, 40 years later, after radicalizing 3 generations of Muslims in Egypt, they then in 1928 started recruiting out of these schools and created a little thing called the Muslim Brotherhood. Okay. And Rashid Rida was responsible. His student was the one who created that in 1928. Go read the history. This is all like out in the open. This is not like, cryptic history. It's right there out in the open. You can go read about this stuff. So the British literally cultivated this and then unleashed it onto the world. At the same time, they were creating Zionism and unleashed that onto the world. Why? It's called a Hegelian dialectic.
Yes,
right?
Which is my favorite thing, and this rounds us into closing. But what's so mind blowing to me goes to that exact point of the Hegelian dialectic is the Christian nationalists, and I use those two words together, not Christians and not nationalists, Christian nationalists, which is what the people in chat yelling at me right now are. What's so hilarious is you guys are the ones that freak out about the Zionists the most. But that's what you're doing. You're literally doing the thing that they want you to do.
They want you to do. They want you to get emotional. They want and so you suspend your logic and you say, yes, let's bring in more laws. Yes, let's give the government more power. Yes.
There are people in our chat saying deport them all. And by them all, they don't mean people who are breaking U.S. constitutional law. They mean, or illegal immigrants who are breaking U.S. constitutional law. I agree. Deport all of those. 100% agree. What they mean is deport all Muslims. And what then follows on from that is, why don't we grab the atheists too? Why don't we grab, who can we grab next? What kind of Christians do we allow to stay here? Because certainly Christianity is a monolith, right? There's no, competing ideologies there, right? It's all just, but they're just the right ones. And it's so wild. If some of you are saying deporting based on being illegal, yeah, sure, totally makes sense. But there are definitely some people, especially Friday night, that are not saying that. They are saying we need to use the weapons of the enemy. And it's funny that Alpha's show is starting now because that's who all these people are. But that's what the argument is. And again, the most hilarious part of this is if you are earnestly falling into that dialectic of us versus them, round them up, all this kind of shit, you are literally closing the loop of the Hegelian dialectic to Ghost Point, which has been programmed into you through Con Inc., who have been funded by Jewish NGOs. Yes. So it's just hilarious. It's like when the bad guys,
exactly what they want you to do.
When those people see MAGA people on Twitter and in Rumble chats saying round them up, deport them all, they sit back with their tea and they're like, got another one, boss. So that's that. And to preview next week, I'll let you kind of preview it, but I think it'll be good to transition. I named this episode The Final Boss. We talked about Israel a lot tonight. We talked about how that region in the Middle East is kind of realigning, and we think largely in keeping with a multipolar world, a sovereign alliance world. Next week, as Ghost was starting to preview there, I want to start to connect the Israel proxy with the Ukraine proxy and talk about that other major proxy on the game board, which is Ukraine. And I think we can get into not just how these two proxy wars and proxy states and proxy leaders, our boy Z and our boy Yuhu, seem to be converging a little bit in the central narrative, but maybe we can also have some fun and project. Does that mean these narratives are going to converge? Does that mean these timelines on where these things are going are also going to converge in some way? But if you have any thoughts to kind of set up, the fact that Ukraine and Israel seem to be being brought a little bit closer into conjunction in the central narrative in 2026.
Yeah, well, I mean, we can certainly point out the fact that the two people who visited President Trump at the White House on the day of Lindsey Graham's funeral were Zelensky and Netanyahu. I don't think that was a coincidence at all. There also was like a video of them speaking at the funeral. Now, Netanyahu has not been complimentary of Zelensky publicly, but it's very obvious that they have been working together because you have IDF officers in Ukraine, you have Azov battalion fighters in Gaza. There's definitely an exchange of weaponry where the Azov battalion is using Israeli-made weapons, the Tabor rifle, for example. So, I mean, all of that is like provably, demonstrably so. They held a parade for the Azov battalion, which is a Nazi organization, back in like 2022 in Tel Aviv. So this is openly documented. I will point out this because, like, again, I know people say I'm crazy when I say this shit, and that's fine. Like, I am a little crazy. Why would Greece attack Turkey? That I just saw a number of people say that in the chat. Here's a video from December 22nd, 2025, a trilateral defense summit of Cyprus on the left, Netanyahu in the middle, and Greece on the right. And it's in Hebrew, so I won't play the video. But the quote is, quote, "For those who dream of restoring their Ottoman Empire, this will not happen. If you don't know the history of Greece and Turkey, the Byzantine Empire, the greatest Christian civilization to ever exist, a 1,000-year Christian empire that the children in public schools do not learn about. We do not teach our kids about the Byzantine Empire because it is the one Christian empire that lasted 1,000 years, was, of course, overthrown and defeated by the Ottoman Empire and replaced by the Ottoman, because all of Turkey used to be Greek. It used to be the Byzantine Empire. That bad blood between those two civilizations is still there, still very much there, where there's like encroachment going both ways. And it's like, there's a lot of bad blood there between the Christian Greeks and the Muslim Turks. So the idea that Greece would attack Turkey is not at all crazy. It's actually very much in alignment with history.
Yep, and we're seeing that converge. We're seeing, again, Ukraine and Israel converge. And I think the global sort of battle space, the narrative battle space, has been arrayed in such a way, largely by Trump this year, that it's kind of forcing alignments out into the open. You know, alignments and disalignments that we've speculated on for a long time. It's forcing that stuff out into the open. And that's really, again, to go back to one of the earlier points tonight, one of the second order effects of the perpetuation and the extension of this Iran war narrative timeline, to me, is that it is forcing, like, anybody who was on the line, declare yourself on one side or another, of not just as simple as sovereign alliance or against it, but more like, are you on board with the future vision of the multipolar world? Or are you trying to get us back onto that old vision of proxy states and proxy wars and globalists? And each week that goes by, we're seeing positives and negatives. We're seeing negatives in terms of some of these players demonstrating who they are and what they actually want and what they want to stop. And then we're seeing positives like Mecca on Friday with these Muslim nations aligning together. So, if you guys want to just be mad about Muslims all the time, you can go ahead and do that. Ghost and I are going to talk about how we're seeing unprecedented Muslim partnerships, who are actually the only people who are going, to Ghost's earlier point, they're the only people who are going to be able to solve this problem. A new holy war and round them up type of thing isn't really going to do much, although we want illegals deported. So we can all agree on that, but that's as far as I'll go with it. But anyway, Ghost, I'll see you, I think, next Sunday night. We'll keep you guys posted on that. We'll get further into Ukraine as a proxy, how it might have a lot more to do with Israel than maybe you think. We can pull on some threads there, and over the next week, maybe find some fun little narratives over the last couple of years. Because Ghost and I have been tracking this for a while. There's been quite a few narratives linking Ukraine and Israel. Quite a few leaders that have not been doing so well in Zelensky's anti-corruption purges. And they keep finding their way over to Israel for some reason. and how Trump is handling that narrative too, and Russia obviously features heavily in both. So we'll get into that and maybe into how some things are aligning more in that Eurasia, Central Asia region, where today we focused on the Middle East. So if you guys enjoyed this, please hit the thumbs up button. If you want to see more of Ghost and I, you can obviously watch us on our Badlands shows, and you should go to badlands.substack.com. Ghost and I work 5 days a week on the Badlands Brief along with Ash, and we do the Badlands Blitz, which is an exclusive 1 hour Blitz show on Saturdays on the Substack. We just had one come out yesterday by the time you're watching this, so go back and check that out. It's all free over there. And otherwise, let me grab just a couple of quick rants. Kairos, not sure if you're able to save this, but it's been news this week. Thought you might like to follow the narrative. I don't know if a Facebook link is going to work for me because it's not working for me. And then S2G, I think I kind of addressed this. The Nation of Islam has Sharia law. It is repugnant to our republic form of government. The people are guaranteed in Article 4, Section 4 in the U.S. Constitution. Same with democracy, which I think we addressed.
Fully agree.
We agree that Sharia law has no place here.
I would take it a step further, and say not only illegals, but I would say people like foreigners, like naturalized citizens who advocate for Sharia law in America, they should be denaturalized and deported as well.
Yep. Totally agree with that. We are not refuting that. We are only talking about not wanting the federal government to have the right to ban ideologies, religions, or groups of people.
They don't need any more power. Just enforce the laws on the books. That's all we need.
Like, so I know there was a bunch of you trying to straw man like the alpha argument there or steel man it rather and say that that's not what was being said, but that's exactly what was being said. So nice try on the swerve. It doesn't work. And anyway, we'll see you next week. We'll see you throughout the week. Hit the thumbs up button. Ghost, when are you back on?
Thanks for having me, man. Honestly, I don't know. TBD. It might be on this show.
Got his new schedule working out, so
Yeah.
We'll
it might be on this show. Honestly, next Sunday. Right. I'm gonna try to record a geopolitics show this week, if I can. So obviously, there's a lot to talk about there with the Mecca agreement. So,
well, maybe you'll be seeing Ghost on the narrative more often if this works with the schedule. But all right, man. Thanks for joining me. Have a good week, and thank you guys for watching. As I always say, the war is a story. The story is a war. Act accordingly. Oh, let me hit the button that I messed up